last night you were having downloads and getting ready for today, downloads this morning, like you went for a walk on the beach which is in complete contrast to the last time recorded. And our preparation for recording is so interesting every single time. I think there's going to be a method to the madness, but there's actually never.
Me too.
Never a method to the madness. I'm like, yes, I'll use this strategy next time, and it just completely gets washed away. So you this morning went for a walk on the beach.
It's interesting that you said strategy and washed away, because I think that's actually the strategy, is that there is no strategy. And we've spoken about this previously. And I think the more that we lean into, like this time yesterday, I had absolutely no idea what we were going to be speaking about. And today there is so much information coming through that I actually am worried now that I'm not going to capture everything that I wanted to share.
Incredible.
Isn't that incredible?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So what's the, so you told me just like 5 minutes ago, Saturn.
Yes.
So what do you want to talk about with Saturn? Like, what are the key points that have been coming through? Because it's been very poignant for you this morning.
It was basically Saturn energy. The message was you need to talk about Saturn and only Saturn. I think in the previous recording, we went quite high level with all of the outer planet transits, which were really significant for 2025 and 2026. And I've been asked to talk today specifically about Saturn and the cycles in which Saturn is a 30-year cycle. So it takes approximately 29 and a half years to go all the way around the signs of the zodiac, which is why when you have a Saturn return, it happens anywhere between the ages of like 28 to 30-ish, 31, depending on your natal Saturn and how many retrogrades Saturn has in the years previously or whatever. So at the ages of like, say, 28, 29, we have a Saturn return, and it's essentially the transiting Saturn going all the way around the zodiac and hitting your natal Saturn. And it's essentially an initiation into like your coming of age. It's an initiation into you stepping forward as a mature adult, I'll say. A lot of childhood stuff, I know for me personally, a lot of childhood stuff came up for me, perhaps even some trauma from things that happened in childhood that needed to be cleared, needed to be looked at. Because it's like throughout our teens and our 20s, it's all fun and it's school and it's gap years and it's potentially university. It might even be working for some people. But then you hit closer to 30, and I don't know about you, but I went through like a quarter life crisis. I was like, holy dooly, I am almost 30 and I'm not where I want to be. And similar things happen, I feel like, when you hit 40. I feel like any major age, probably when you hit 50 as well. But you kind of go like, this is life. I'm hitting this massive milestone. But a lot of it is due to Saturn's energy. Saturn is very much about maturity. It rules Capricorn. It's a masculine energy in the sense that it teaches us lessons. And at our Saturn return, things come up to be looked at. And they come up because Saturn is asking us to move into our next level of self. And I said this previously, but Saturn gets a bad rap because of this, because it feels like the initiations are like hard work and they're scary, and people are like, Saturn returns are crazy, and you go through a dark night of the soul, and it's work, right? It's inner work, it's emotional work. But I feel, as I was driving here this morning, what I wanted to talk about with Saturn was actually a bit of a reframe on that, because Saturn is there to teach us self-mastery, ultimately. And the energy is there because we're having a human experience. We're here to have a human experience, which means we need to look at what life is showing us. We feel emotions because we're human. And I truly believe that we are human and we are divine. However, anyone who looks at Saturn and goes, oh, it's scary and it's dark and it's this, I feel like that's a bit of bypassing the human experience, because Saturn really is there because he picks up and highlights the patterns in our life, the lessons that we're here to learn in order to grow. So the way I'm starting to look at Saturn, like purely in the last 24 hours, which is just wild, is actually the doorway to our own personal evolution, which is so profound for me. Because what's been happening, and I'm going to bring this back to the current Saturn transits that we're in. And what's happening currently with Saturn is that the end of November 2025, Saturn began to move direct at 25 degrees of Pisces. He was in retrograde since May of 2025, so it's been 5 months retrograde. So he's been backtracking through all the last 5 degrees of Pisces in that time frame in 2025. And from the 29th of November or the 30th of November, Saturn started to move direct. And whenever a planet moves out of retrograde and starts to move direct, the energy shifts. And what's happening with Saturn is moving from 25 degrees of Pisces through 26, 27, 28, and 29. And then on the 13th of February, is that the right date? I just want to double check that date.
Yeah, you said 13th.
Yeah, 13th or 14th if you're in Australia of February, Saturn will hit 0 degrees of Aries. And this is so significant because not only do we have like a personal Saturn return where it takes 29 or 30 years to hit your natal Saturn, in the zodiac, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It's the end point. Aries is the beginning point. And so we're on this collective, like end of a 30-year cycle. Saturn is hitting the first degree of the zodiac, which is 0 degrees of Aries. And this is a reset point for the last 30 years. Astrology always works in cycles. It's essentially the art of tracking its pattern recognition and cycles because everything is cyclical. And so you look at Saturn is going around and it's going around every 30 years. And then Jupiter is going around every 12 years. And then Jupiter and Saturn meet at a point in the zodiac every whatever years. And then that means something. And then that means something. And it just keeps laying over patterns and cycles and patterns and cycles. Like, honestly, they're never ending. And so essentially when I just zoom into Saturn, I mean, Neptune is going to be hitting 0 degrees of Aries as well, which is why this is so massive in February. This is the cosmic reset, not just the Saturnian reset of the 30 years, but the cosmic reset point where Saturn and Neptune are holding hands, moving into that threshold of 0 degrees of Aries. And that hasn't happened for like, I'm pretty sure it's like 5,000 BC or something. And so there's that on a massive scale, but I feel called today to talk about this 30-year cycle with the current Saturn. So it feels to me like since Saturn has started moving direct, we have a few months' time before the 13th of February where he hits 0 degrees of Aries to clear out whatever's not coming with us from this previous 30-year cycle. And like I said, this is happening on a collective level, so on the world stage, which I feel that in every part of my being at the moment. World politics, events, talk of war, talk of like whole scary, scary stuff. There's so much happening on a world stage. And Saturn sitting at these last few degrees of Pisces very much speaks to like what's not coming with us. So what's happened in the last 30 years. So the last time Saturn moved into Aries was April or March 1996. 1996 feels like such a long time ago. It was 30 years ago, right? 29 years ago. And so it was, and Saturn transit from 1996 to 1999, Aries the last time. And when I think about my own, where I was at in my life in that point in time, I was in high school and it was my last few years of high school. So the way that we can look at how this is going to impact our personal chart is where does Aries live in your own chart? What house does it represent? And for me, I read Placidus, which is a type of astrology. Aries for me lives in the second house, but it crosses over into my third house. So Aries actually rules my third house, which is my house of communication. But it's currently sitting, when Saturn moves into Aries in February next year, it's in my second house of money, of self-worth, of possessions, of my value system, which is very big themes for me at the moment, in this era that I am in my purpose and in my business. And when I looked back just yesterday at where I was at between 1996 and 1999, by the end of Saturn's transit through Aries at that time in my life, I had completed high school. In fact, I didn't complete high school. That was the point. I decided I didn't want to do year 12 because I wanted to work. And so I left at the end of year 11 in 1999 and started work. I started full-time work and having my own personal income. And Aries is in my second house of income, of money, of personal resources. And so I just used that example. Again, like I said, I just looked at it yesterday and I thought, it's really interesting. That was where I was at 30 years ago. And I almost feel like I've come full cycle again with all the lessons that came in the last 30 years. And I'm at that kind of reset point in my life again. I'm a mother. I'm working for myself, which is where I've always wanted to be. I'm earning, like, it's kind of similar, right? Like the transition from high school, from not having an income to getting your first job and having a full-time income, to now where it's like always working for other people and now working for myself. So it's like this personal wealth, personal material possessions, whatever. They're all things that live in the second house. And yeah, it feels like a wrapping up. And so what I've noticed in the last only 2 weeks since Saturn has started to move forward is a lot of themes have been coming up. Themes around money, themes around my worth. And I'll share one in particular, which has been, something came up and I was like, why do I feel stuck? There's this threshold that I haven't crossed yet into this next level of business, this next level of self-expression, purpose, whatever you want to call it. And I drilled down, I really sat with it and I drilled down into it. And what I was shown, or what I saw, was that I still had a core belief system that I had to work hard to make money. Money, I had to earn money. It had to be earned. It had to be hard. It had to be hard physically. It had to be hard on my body. It had to be hard mentally. It had to be stressful, and you had to be responsible. And they're actually all really Saturnian themes. Saturn rules Capricorn, like I said. And it is about responsibilities. It's about discipline. It's a planet of discipline. And I've been looking at this theme and I was like, this can't come with me where I'm going. If I want to move into my next evolution of self, I can't have this ingrained belief system that it's got to be hard. That's not mine, in fact. I got to the point where I was like, this isn't even my belief system. This is my parents. This is my grandparents. This has come from lineage where it actually doesn't even belong to me. It's been passed down to me, and it stops here. At that 0 point of Aries when Saturn moves on the 13th of February, this ain't coming with me. No way. And so I'm using this energy of Saturn moving forward, not as like going into victimhood and I have to work hard to earn money and these are my old stories and the patterns. It's like, okay, show me everything that's not coming. Let's go deep into all of these old patternings, these old belief systems that aren't invited into the next evolution of myself. And this is the beauty of Saturn. And I truly see it as like a beautiful, it's a malefic planet. Like, so people see it as like we always label something as good or bad. It's like Jupiter's good, Saturn's bad. And I just don't see it like that. I see Saturn as really this energy that can support our evolution. And that is what Saturn is doing to us, both on a personal level and on the collective stage. It's like everything playing out on the world stage right now with leaders of the world is playing out because it's like, this ain't coming. This can't come into the new world, into the new earth, into the new paradigm of how we're going to live and operate. These are outdated systems and everybody can see them, but they're coming up to be looked at. They're coming up to be felt, and they're coming up to be almost like transcended. So what else came up? Actually, I'm going to stop talking there. Do you have any questions? Did anything come up as I was talking? Because I want to go into something came up this morning around the gene keys as well. And I just want to speak to that because it feels so significant.
I think you should keep talking. I've got things, but I'm taking notes as I go, so then I can respond from that point.
As I was driving here this morning, and I think I've explained this before, but the way I look at astrology now, particularly with these massive transits of the outer planets, which move so slowly, so they're more significant for all of us. The way I've been interpreting this is combining it astrology with gene keys, and they all talk to each other, human design, astrology, and gene keys. But what I've been looking at is if Saturn is moving from 25 degrees to 29 degrees of Pisces, that last sign of the zodiac, over the next few months, what gene key does it sit in? And what is the gene key telling us? And so I just had a look like literally half an hour ago, and it sits in the 36th gene key. And it goes from the 36 and it changes at the 28 degree mark. But to not get too technical today, I think I'll just go into the 36th gene key. And I had a quick read and a quick listen to what it was about. And I'll be honest, I haven't had time to really sit in contemplation with this, but from just the words that I read, it felt so resonant and so important to share at this moment of time, particularly if people are sitting with big emotions, they're sitting with things that are coming up for them that they don't know what to do with, or they're sitting with collective fear on that global stage from what's playing out, what we see on the media, and just what we pick up on. There is a lot of fear and about what might happen. There's a lot of uncertainty, and the 36th gene key speaks to human suffering. So I just want to reference it so that I can do it justice. So in gene keys, the 36th gene key, it's called Becoming Human. And in gene keys, there's a shadow energy. And then once we move through the shadow, we move into the gift of that energy. And then we moved into the city, which is like the highest expression or the highest consciousness of that gift, of that gene key. And so the three levels in the 36 gene key are: the shadow is turbulence. I mean, if there was a word that we could use for what's happening on the global stage at the moment, it would be turbulent. The second gift, the gift of the next level, is humanity. And then the city, like the place that where we want to reach in the highest level of consciousness here, is compassion. It actually rules the solar plexus, which is very interesting because we've been having lots of conversations around the solar plexus. For me personally, I've had to do a bit of clearing around this area. And the turbulence, so that the shadow of this is actually around the dark night of the soul. And I'm just going to read a little section of it just to give some context here, because I felt like it was so powerful when I read it. It says, among mystics, the 36th shadow, which is turbulence, has long been known as the dark night of the soul. It is an archetype within human beings that pulls us toward the unknown and that draws the unknown towards us. In doing so, this shadow tests your levels of frequency and offers you the opportunity to transcend your own suffering. Like, it's essentially like written beautifully in the way of everything I just said. It just sums up that beautifully. So it's like Saturn here is asking us to look, to not go into suffering, but to look at what wants to come up, to transcend it ultimately. It tends to draw crisis toward itself like a magnet. If you do not break out of your own victim patterns, but continue to resist your true nature, you will keep being shown the same lessons again and again until you learn from them. That's Saturn. And that is life. This is how we move into trust with life, is when we look at what's happening to us in our life, and we don't look at it from like, this is happening to me, but this is happening for me. And it's happening for me because when I take a step back, I can see that what is seemingly a challenge or a struggle is actually a pattern that's coming up for us to learn something from in order to move into our next level of evolution. And this is what Saturn represents in the chart. And then I feel like this energy is like it's doubling down on this energy because it's the last degrees of the zodiac. It's the end of a cycle in this 36th gene key where it's like all the suffering is coming to the surface. And I just, it's just feels so true. It goes on to say the potential suffering that exists on the account of this gene key is part of a genetic family known as the Ring of Divinity. And this is quite a beautiful revelation. Each of the 4 gene keys within this codon group has the capacity to awaken the highest consciousness inside of you. And it goes on to explain some of those gene keys. And then it says, as you allow yourself to be purged by the power of your own suffering, in other words, let go of what's coming up and look at it to what's not coming with you, like I said, you will realize the utter bliss and the higher states and will recognize your own huge good fortune. As we shall see, this codon group in many respects is deeply connected to the true meaning of Christ consciousness. If you feel a strong connection to it or have this key aspect in your profile, you are indeed a fortunate human being and your journey will inevitably lead you to this realization. The way that I translate that is the suffering is the key to our ascension. And this is essentially what Christ consciousness is. Christ represented both humanity, human and divine. And I don't know much about this topic. I don't know it from a religious perspective, but just reading that today, it just landed for me in such a big way. It's like, and I even feel like the last recordings that we've made and like I've been talking about the emerging mystic as an archetype of the new paradigm, and I've been talking about the new earth and the new paradigm. I even feel I can see now that version of me, which was only a few weeks old, was very much just looking at the ascension process as like this divine process and all of this good that can happen. But I was honestly kind of bypassing the human aspects that come through. Not that I haven't done all the work and sat in shadow before or anything like that, but I've just today had this new profound insight into how to actually get to the next levels of our own personal evolution, our own and the collective, is to really sit and accept what life is showing us, not from a place of victimhood, but from a place of potential. I've got a bit more to read, and I don't want this to be like a reading, but it's so profound, and I just feel really strongly that I want to share it. As a living transmission, the 36th gift, this is where we move into the gift. So that was the shadow, and this is the gift of the 36 gene key. It's the celebration of humanity. It contains a natural spirituality that is more humanist than divine. In this case, is one of the most grounded gene keys. It's a bridge for the higher bodies of humanity to move down into the lower planes and transform them. It conveys the image of Christ descending into hell and absorbing its frequencies fully into his own being. All human beings partake of this gene key, whether it's prominent in your profile or not. Every emotional struggle that comes your way talks directly to this aspect within your DNA. At the gift level, the 36th gene key has learned to accept its pain rather than run from it. In embracing pain, you are actually trusting in your own strength and in life. If you are in pain, then that pain is there to teach you something. I mean, this is Saturn. It is an invitation to accept your humanity in more depth and to feel the humility of living within the mortal form. And then finally, it speaks about the evolutionary urge to go on exploring new territory ensures that people with this gift never lead dull lives. And at the high levels, they can experience the most profound, heart-opening experiences. This gift is the archetype of the true purpose of human suffering and is here to teach us that life is a full flavor and pleasure and pain always come together. Let's just take a minute for that. Something else, another theme that came through this week was just about contrast. And I feel like ultimately that's how I interpret that. It's about contrast in life. And knowing that right now, either personally or on the world stage, we're mostly in the dark. A lot of us are in the dark. Definitely, like the earth, humanity, humans are at a dark point because of what's happening. And a lot of spiritual teachings speak to this, which is that right after the dark comes the light. And if you're sitting in something that's painful, and if your things are coming up, and look, I don't think it always needs to be really like dark night of the soul. I think we spoke about this last time. I feel like what's coming up for me now and the things that are coming up, I'm kind of clocking them like, okay, there's a thing, but I'm not really in the suffering of it. I'm more removed from it. I'm seeing it as a pattern. I'm seeing it as a block and something that needs to be released, but I'm not like in the depths of it, if that makes sense, because I've been in the depths of it before. It's almost like, hey, it's like, this is still here. Saturn's like, it's still here. Just make sure you look at this and deal with this because it's not invited to where we're going. It can't come with you in order for you to get to the next level that's available to you. And I guess I just wanted to say that it doesn't always need to be deep, dark suffering. And I think the higher we all evolve as conscious beings, the levels of consciousness that are available to us, we will be able to transmute these energies faster, but also not to bypass them. If there's something there, if there's suffering or pain or something that you need to look at and sit in it. Because the quicker you sit in it, the quicker you can transmute it. And then it goes on to say, I won't read it, but the very last description of the city of this, which is compassion of the 36th gene key, it goes on to speak, or he goes on, I should say, Richard Rudd, who wrote the Gene Keys book and system. It goes on to say that somebody in that city, which is the highest expression of that gene key, can actually go from so dark, and I think about some of our world leaders right now, so dark, like complete ego, darkness. They're doing things where we're just like, I can't believe this person. Are they even human? Like, where's the compassion? But this level that it gets to this breaking point where this person can actually take an evolutionary leap, not like sit through the suffering for the next 20 years and gradually learn and heal from it. They get to leap, and this is the only gene key that does this, leap into their ascension, into enlightenment. And I have chills as I'm saying that because this is Saturn teaching us the lessons, sitting in this gene key, and it's like we're in the dark. And come February, we have an opportunity as humanity, and I'm covered in chills, to evolutionary leap into a higher level of consciousness, into more enlightened beings, into the light, and let go of all of this darkness. And I think the more that we can realize that this is the energy that's available to us right now, particularly with Neptune there. So not only is Saturn moving into Aries and this zero reset point, Neptune is sitting at the 29th degree of Pisces, and Neptune represents consciousness and oneness, and they're doing it together, which means this is like an energy that we've never felt before and an opportunity that we truly haven't had before to make this leap into the new paradigm. And so just to wrap up, it's like whatever feels dark right now, whatever's coming up, whatever you're moving through, and you might even not feel this, and that's perfect. The signs that probably will feel this the most are the signs that have planets in the mutable signs. So Pisces and Virgo, particularly the last degrees, it's going to be hitting your planets in the last degrees of Pisces and Virgo or the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. So any planets in those mutable signs will definitely be feeling this more than others. However, it doesn't matter what level you're on, just know that whatever's coming up is like available to be transmuted, and we have this cosmic backing and this cosmic support to just let it all go and move into whatever it is that's next, which is our next evolutionary leap.
I've got so much to respond to. The first thing they're saying is the 4 mutable signs that you were just talking about will raise the frequency because they're going through the depth of this transformation, this ascension, this becoming. They're saying to me, becoming. It's like these 4 signs hold enough of the collective consciousness that by the time it gets to the 13th of February, the work has been done. A lot of the work has been done on a pure population
shift, yeah.
But the amount of people, like I'm talking actual bodies doing work. They're showing me like body, like it's a collective of people that are segmented away from the greater collective that are working through this. The feeling, while you're having chills, there's 2 feelings for me. That heart consciousness, that heart energy, but also fear. It's the duality, right? The fear of the unknown when you're in the darkness, and they showed me it as a room. You know the room because you've been in the room in the darkness for so long. You know where the walls are, you know where the boundaries are of the space that you're in, and it's hazy and it's dark. When you think about leaving that room, you've got no idea what's out there. That's the fear. Walking into that leap of faith to be like, let's get out of here. Do you stay in the comfort of where you're at, or do you remove yourself and move into the energy of expansiveness for yourself? And when you're talking about this gene key, what was it, 35? 36. And you're talking about victim, being in this victim situation. You're literally, every room has a door, right? It's like you just haven't been looking for the door, or you've known it's there and you've been ignoring it the whole time. And then this marries into the 55th gene key of victim to freedom. It's like at this point in February, it's where we start to move into the 55th gene key, which is around new human consciousness. Right now, though, there's too much fear about moving outside of the box that you've trapped yourself in with the Saturn concepts. Purely fear. We've been built to think, definitely, like what you're saying, Saturn is the enemy, but it's actually not. And a reflective contrast to your experience with Saturn, I was thinking about my timelines. And in that 96 to 99, I was also in high school. And high school was, a fine experience. I wouldn't say that it's fabulous, but I know I was just doing my dues as a human there. But 98, my parents separated, and I did go into victim. I spent my 20s in victimhood and self-sabotaging, off the rails, pushing the boundaries, as you should when you're in your 20s, I guess. But I felt like it was on steroids a little bit. Not as extreme as some people can go, but for my personality type, it was definitely extreme. And then when I come into that Saturn return for my personal journey, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I hit 27. I separated from someone. It was before that. I separated for someone. I'd been with someone since my early 20s, and I knew it wasn't right, but we were together for the reasons and learnings that I needed to have. And then I get to 26, 27, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be this. And when I get to 28, 29, 30, 31, early 30s, in the beauty of Saturn, I had a beautiful relationship. And with my partner now, who I married, but more importantly, I created a beautiful relationship with myself. And that is not what I created in that 96, 99. It was so contrasting. So contrasting.
I just want to give a little input from an astrological perspective on that for you, because your Saturn return is in Libra.
Okay.
Your Saturn, you've got a natal Saturn in Libra. And so that 1996 to 1999 time is actually when you were in your Saturn's opposition, which is what you're going to be coming into in the next year or two.
Great.
Yeah, but let's not react like that, right? Because you've done so much work. I don't believe that just necessarily because it's a Saturn opposition, it has to have a bad association with it. And it's interesting because opposition, so an opposition in astrology is when the planets are directly opposing each other, and is that contrast, that opposing energy, and it's generally to do with relationships. So in that 1996 to 1999, Saturn was in Aries, opposing your natal Saturn in Libra. That's the axis of relationship. And it also lands in your 8th house. So that transit of Saturn in 1996 to 1999 landed in your 8th house, and your parents separating. 8th house stuff is deep emotional stuff. It's the natural territory of Scorpio and Pluto. We're talking about deaths and rebirths here. We're talking about lawyers, we're talking about separation, we're talking about other people's money, we're talking about it's the opposite of Libra, but it's the opposite of the 2nd house, which is your personal money. 8th house is other people's money. And so I imagine in that time, their separation, it was like this breaking up of your world and your security. The 8th house is about security. And so everything you said just makes so much sense from an astrological level.
And I think up until this point, and some of the deeper nights of the soul that I've been working through, not even because, I'm at a different level now where it doesn't even go that deep, like what you were saying, once you transcend to a certain point or you reach a certain point, it's just clues, right? And then you can work through it. It's like, okay, I recognise, I shift.
It's clues. It's a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, I call them breadcrumbs really, but it's, I recognise and then I shift because I'm not sitting in victim anymore.
Yep.
In my 20s, or, my late teens or mid-teens, when that separation was happening, I was in victim because I didn't know how to control myself. I hadn't become into an
You're
adult.
a child.
I'm a child.
Yeah.
And also in reflection, that's somebody else's stuff, and security with a family breakup. I spent my whole 20s, even my 30s, finding, even now, like I'm early 40s, and security is something that has been at the forefront of the healing. And so when you say, I'm like, oh, doomsday, Saturn's coming back in opposition, but I see that now actually as I've done a lot of inner work to build grounding and security for myself with relationships, and it comes into my solar plexus energy around boundaries. So, we're all experiencing it. How it sits for you in your placements, that's the interpretation for how you move through it and what you need to find.
So just on that, I just want to reiterate, if anybody wants to look at this transit of Saturn and how it could potentially play out in your own natal chart, look to the house that Aries lives in.
Okay.
And in whole sign astrology, it'll govern a whole entire house. Or in Placidus, it may go over 2 houses. Like in my instance, it's a 2nd and 3rd house. But it will rule, Aries will rule like one of your houses. For me, it's the 3rd house. So ChatGPT can tell you this, right? So look at your chart, look at the house, look at what that house represents, whether it's relationships or money or self-worth or communication or career or whatever. And those are some of the themes. So Saturn will be transiting Aries from when it moves in February 2026, and it'll be there until 2028. Let me give you the exact date, because somebody specifically asked that I give exact dates. It'll be in Aries until April 2028. So it's actually only like a 2-year transit. Sometimes it's 2.5. So Aries until April 2028. And that is this transit of Saturn into Aries and those themes that potentially come up.
Mm. There's so much more to come through. The personal themes that are happening with your natal chart, there is a higher consciousness override, like a higher collective override of this fear of moving out of victim into freedom. What freedom looks like for individuals is unique to every individual. And in that, with that gene key 55, that sits with the solar plexus. So they're telling me now that the transition in the next 2 years is around working with the solar plexus energy.
And can you tell us what the solar plexus represents?
It's your personal power without forcing things, coming into your own, having boundaries, knowing where you stand, what you want, what moves you in a beautiful way that connects you to your heart energy, to joy, to love, to peace, to your purpose. When it connects up to joy, love, peace, that's, to the heart energy. But when it connects down into your purpose, when you clear that, you can move more into your purpose. And what you and I do is around supporting people in their purpose, your soul destiny. And, it's the solar plexus is the gateway, really. It's the gateway to that freedom. And it is moving past that fear. It's a difficult one because not for everybody, but primarily, and I can feel this as a collective consciousness, as I said before, fear is what's the word? It's the overshadow working on collective consciousness. So back to like what we were talking about before with the mutable signs, those mutable signs will be working past the fears of moving into their own personal power, whatever that looks like. And I've been doing that a lot lately. I know you've had a recent experience with that. And even on reflection of, because we work so closely together, when you've been having experience, I use that as my own experience. And I had another layer of my solar plexus energy lift. And it's like, I can't remember the exact words my guides gave me when I was moving that energy through and out and getting it into equilibrium. But it was like, this is the shift. This is what all the work has accumulated to with me on a personal level to be, okay, now we're at the upper layers. There's not so much depth there for you to go so deep into the dark night of the souls anymore. You don't have to have 15 or 500 of those before you can get to the next layer. And the next layer is very important in moving in freedom and ease and beauty and purpose. If you can move in purpose, in fluidity and in harmony, everything falls into line. Like we talk about manifesting, everyone talks about manifesting, right? How do you manifest? How do you know you're reaching manifesting? You need to be in flow. You need to be in flow. And when you've got conflict within your system, and all the bodies, what I'm talking about, the psychological, the mental, the physical, when you've got conflict within all of those and you're at war within yourself and you're at war with the collective, you can't move into flow. And so you can't manifest. Well, you can, but it's very difficult. You can't say can't because there's always possibilities of doing things, but it works on different layers as well. And so right now, I've been told it's the final clearings. I mentioned this to you. It's been coming up for me in the last couple of weeks. Sources been like, it's the final clearings. It's the final, and there's this urgency around it. And I'm like, okay, for you guys to have this urgency, when's that happening? And I keep thinking we've got this final clearing happening until, I thought it was mid-January when the energy of 2025 comes to a very close close. But they're saying now that it's between that mid-January to the mid-February. We've got that time frame to do our final clearings. And I guess this is a specific message for those mutable signs. It will expand for individuals that have a lot of mutable signs in their charts, but more importantly for the dominant mutable signs in charts, they're saying.
So I'll just reiterate on that. Mutable signs are Pisces and Virgo and Gemini and Sagittarius. And if you have planets, particularly personal planets, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, sitting in the last degrees of any of those mutable signs, Saturn will be hitting those planets and activating them. And so will Neptune. So Neptune is sitting at 29 degrees of Pisces. I just want to reiterate this as well. I got the intel to just speak to Saturn's energy today. However, an almost bigger layer to this is that Neptune is sitting on top of this story. And Neptune moves even slower than Saturn. Neptune's influence is arguably bigger than Saturn's, and it's sitting at 29 degrees of Pisces, the last degree of the entire zodiac. So when you're talking about completions, it's like think about when Saturn's going to go 25 degrees, 26, 27, 28, 29. Neptune and Saturn for a small period of time are going to be sitting at 29 degrees, and it's going to be around that January period. Let me just give you the date that Neptune is officially moving. So Saturn moves on the 13th of February. Neptune moves into Aries on the 26th of January, 2026. So at the beginning of January, they will be sitting together at 29 degrees. Neptune will move into 0 degrees of Aries on the 26th of January. And then 2 weeks later, approximately, Saturn will be there. And then on the 20th of February, another week later, Saturn and Neptune will be at 0 degrees and 44 minutes of Aries in an exact conjunction. And a conjunction is when two signs are basically on top of each other. Their energies merge, and they're merging at the reset point of the entire zodiac. They're merging at 0 degrees of Aries. And so the words that you are using to describe the solar plexus is actually very Aries. And it's almost like a combination of all of these archetypes. Aries is about the self. It's about our own individual wants, needs, and desires. When you're talking about relationships, that's the opposite sign of Libra. Aries is the self. It's self-leadership. It's ambition. It's actually a really fast-moving energy, and Saturn is really not comfortable in this sign. I think it's in its fall or detriment. So in astrology, sometimes planets in particular signs are pretty unhappy there. They're like, this energy doesn't merge. And Saturn feels like that in Aries. However, with the lessons of Saturn from Pisces, the lessons of our dreams and our hopes and our visions and our connection to consciousness, we're bringing all of those lessons and then we're going right into the self. He's dumping them all into that personal power center, our self-responsibility, although Aries as an archetype wants to move really fast and Saturn wants to move really slow, they're going to come together and it's going to be this self-discipline, it's like self-mastery, and it's a mastery of our spiritual selves and our human selves, and it's like this rebirth almost. And with Neptune there, Neptune's bringing in that aspect of consciousness, is bringing in our hopes and our dreams. So when you're speaking to purpose, it's like it's birthing our dreams into reality.
I had down here the next levels of our own personal accountability.
Yeah.
Finding the door in the room and us opening it.
Yes.